Somalia is an underdeveloped country off the east coast of Central Africa. There has been much turmoil surrounding the country's current political state, and citizens throughout are suffering because of it. Many events led up to this, such as early colonization, constant shift in leadership, shortages of water and supplies, and a long-standing civil war. Their economy is one of the worst in the world, and the country is controlled by rival terrorist clans with little regard for human rights. How did Somalia end up this way, and what are people doing to help in this crisis? In the 1950s, there were two separate Somalian colonies, British and Italian Somaliland. Italian Somaliland was renamed Somalia, and in 1960, both the British and the Italian parts of Somalia united and gained independence. They became the United Republic of Somalia. A border dispute with Britain resulted in fighting, and they lost their diplomacy until 1968. The president, Shamark, was assassinated, and Mohammed Sayed Bear maintained power with the coup. There was a drought that caused turmoil, all while Somalia attempted to invade parts of Ethiopia. Sayed Bear was removed as ruler after Somalian troops were pushed out of Ogaden and opposition emerged. Clan warlords began to take control over country in the 1990s. The government had little power. And here is an image of General Sayed Bear. And Sayed Bear's actions had led to international revolutions and ultimately his overthrow in 1991. He received aid from the Soviet Union, and no other countries had cared about what was happening in Somalia. Bear's clan tried to get him back into power but failed. Warlords then began to claim territory. Since there was no centralized government after Bear's overthrow, the country had descended into anarchy and starvation. The United Nations sent aid and peacekeeping missions, but had failed since casualties were increasing and the supply drops were looted and sold. The UN withdrew its troops from Somalia. And here are a couple other images from the Somalian Civil War.
Yes, together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrorist groups have formed recently in Somalia and currently prevent the state government from maintaining complete control. The Islamist insurgent group Al-Shabaab controls the southern and central regions of Somalia, where areas the UN-supported government only has control of Mogadishu, the capital. These terrorist groups impose strict Sharia law that has caused the death of hundreds or thousands of people due to their forms of punishment, including stoning to death. Somalia currently has little support to combat these groups, and the government doesn't have the power to get rid of them on their own.
The anarchy caused by the ongoing civil war has had many consequences on Somalia and other countries. After 30 years of war, it has turned Somalia into a very dangerous and unstable place. Beginning in 1993, the United Nations started a 2-year plan to try to relieve some of the conditions caused by the famine. They did this because 300,000 people had died in the first year because of starvation. As you can see, this image shows the effects of starvation on the population. So their goal was to come, end the starvation, and leave. However, eventually many Somalis began to oppose the foreign presence. In the beginning, they were happy with the food rations they were being given, but eventually they started to believe that the UN was there to convert them to their religion. Between June and October, gun battles in Mogadishu resulted in the death of 24 Pakistanis and 19 US soldiers. Also in this battle, 1,000 Somali militia were killed. 2 US helicopters were also shot down, and American soldiers were chased throughout the streets. This and other battles eventually led to the withdrawal of American troops on March 25, 1994. As you can see, this image shows Somali children playing on the rubble of a crashed US helicopter. Much of the humanitarian aid was being looted, diverted, and sold by warlords. It was failing to reach those who needed the help the most. By controlling the food, multiple warlords were able to maintain power over the regions they controlled. Eventually, the African Union started to take more control of the situation. They created a transitional government, however, it could not establish full control over the country. A group called the Islamic Courts Union, also known as the ICU, had been taking power over the country and even managed to capture the capital. This image shows the location of the Islamic Courts Union and how much it spread throughout Somalia in the year 2006. Their growing power led to conflicts between them and other faction members of Somalia. Eventually, with the help of Ethiopia, the United States, and other groups, they were defeated and their leaders resigned. Overall, the effects of civil war and anarchy in Somalia caused it to be one of the poorest and most dangerous countries in the world. The population of Somalia continues to live through horrible conditions and physical abuse by tribal leaders at war.
Improvements made. Although the conflicts in Somalia have caused havoc throughout the country in the past couple of decades, the country has made small improvements. Compared to other countries, Somalia is still one of the worst overall. Somalia's people have somehow found a way to get by without a government. The living standards have increased slightly since the UN's intervention. Also, the GDP of Somalia has been rising even without a government set in place. Even though that the health system remains one of the worst in the world, the chances of a newborn baby living past its first birthday have increased. In addition, Somalia has somehow managed to avoid the massive HIV/AIDS outbreak in Africa. However, food is still yet scarce, and Somalia has received more foreign aid in the recent years. This graph from the BBC shows the food aid being given across the span of 15 years. Without a government to control its people, some people have found a way to make millions in the poorest country in the world with piracy. Pirates, usually made up of few armed men, patrol the coast of Somalia and hijack supply ships. After that, the pirates sell the goods and make millions per ship. This could be a partial reason for the GDP increase in Somalia, considering the average ransom per haul is approximately $2.7 million. In the years between 2005 and 2012, the total haul in ransom payments is estimated to be between $339 million and $413 million. The average payment per person was between $30,000 and $75,000. Outside investors have usually fund these pirates on their expeditions and receive partial payment. Warships are deployed just off the Somalia coast, but this does not stop the pirates as they hijack ships in bodies of water such as the Indian Ocean, Gulf of Aden, the Red Sea, and the Omani waters. Nothing is stopping the pirates in Somalia because there is no government to control them, but precautions are being taken by providing supply ships with private security teams to fend off against the pirates, along with the foreign warships. Somali piracies have significantly decreased due to foreign powers taking action and stopping these pirates before they act.
Solutions to the civil war and government. Somalia will likely remain in a disastrous situation for a long time. Without strong control over the region, the terrorist groups and clans will continue to fight and create a war zone that civilians have to live in. Fighting in these areas is expected to continue for a long time, as the people in Somalia are regarded as very honorable and reluctant to accept defeat. The government does not seem to have the power or ability to stop the rival warlords on their own, but there must be a solution to fixing Somalia's situation. Solution 1. Leaving Somalia alone. This solution is expected to work for Somalia at some point, as either the warlords will become tired of fighting or they will drive each other out. This would allow for a much more stable government to take control of the country while the area has a gap in leadership, such as the government controlling the capital Mogadishu. However, some drawbacks of this are the amount of time it would take, and the violence that would occur. No one is certain of how much longer it would take for the fighting in Somalia to die down on its own. Even if it is relatively quickly, the violence caused by the warfare would be excessive and most likely would not be worth it. Solution 2 is outside intervention. A more powerful outside government intervening in Somalia has seemed like the only viable option for a long time. This would provide much more resources and defense against terrorism and warlords in Somalia. This would give Somalia a chance to implement a better government structure after the situation is more peaceful. However, there are many drawbacks to this as well, like the fact that the UN and the United States had to withdraw from Somalia several years ago. This would likely discourage them or other countries from intervening again, as the situation has not changed much since then, and there is no guarantee that it would be worth it for these countries. Another issue is that it is difficult to transition from an outside government or military to a completely independent one. Solution 3 is to follow the lead of Somaliland. The surrounding outskirts of Somalia contain Somaliland, which is a much more peaceful and structured nation-like area. Somaliland wishes to secede from Somalia, but they might be a part of Somalia's solution. If Somalia follows the democratic structure that Somaliland implements, it may be possible to overpower the other power figures in Somalia, with Mogadishu, the capital, and Somaliland combined. The drawbacks to this is that there is no guarantee that the leaders in Mogadishu would want to follow the lead of Somaliland, as they would have to give up their power and control, and there is no guarantee that this strategy would completely wipe out the warlords controlling a huge part of Somalia.